So I've added some of the basic textures that I've just downloaded just to kind of rough out some of the basic areas of the landscape. I want my first person camera to start over here towards the end of the island and eventually work its way around. So I'm going to start thinking a little bit about how to create paths based on textures that'll help drive the user around the island to a couple of the collectibles or points of interest. And I'll really continue to play with and refine this, but there's a couple of other things that I want to take into consideration. I definitely want to start to manipulate the lights, introduce different kinds of lights, and play with the intensity and the color. I also want to really start to think about this other island that's going to be my volcanic island here as a possible point of interest. So I really want to just kind of rough this out really quickly, and I'll just select the train tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the raised terrain brush, and I'm going to grab probably a harder edge brush, and I'll set it to a smaller brush size. And I'm going to hold down the shift key and really kind of push down in the center of this. And in fact, maybe I'll even use this this paint height brush, and I'll set this to something like maybe 10. I'll make sure I have the brush size right, and I'll just paint directly down inside that volcano. And so at this point, I'm able to kind of press that edge down, and things got a little crazy on the outside, so I'll just go back and use the raise brush and kind of work back and forth and really kind of sculpt the edge of this a little bit. And then I think a little bit will go a long way with this. I'll add different kinds of textures. I'll just jump back in to my paint texture, and I'll really quickly rough in some additional textures that'll help describe this as a volcano. And I'm noticing I'm getting a lot of tiling with my textures, and I can go back later and really figure out what the most appropriate size for these textures are. Again, I just want to make a real quick pass to kind of help describe what it is that I'm looking at. So I'm layering in some sand, some dirt. I'm getting into these rock cliff textures that I found, and I'm not going to be able to get away with using just these textures. I'll need to go out and either find some additional textures or start to create my own textures, either by taking some photographs and manipulating them or illustrating some content inside Photoshop. But at least for reference, I have some reference here in terms of I can see what my volcano is starting to look like. And I'll need to get this to erupt. So I want some kind of smoke up in the air. And there's a really great set of tools inside Unity that allow us to play with particles for different kinds of effects. And I think the particles are going to be exactly what I need here to create a smoking volcano effect. So inside the standard assets folder, there's a particles folder. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll just click on the little triangle and reveal the hierarchy. And there's different particle presets. There's dust, fire, some miscellaneous particles. And probably what I'm looking for to get started with is the smoke. And again, if you're missing this asset, you should be able to go to the Assets menu, Import Package, and Import Particles. And so I've gone inside the particles folder, inside the smoke, and we can really get a lot of mileage out of using particles for different kinds of effects inside Unity. And so I'm just going to experiment, and I'm going to grab this fluffy smoke particle, and I'll just drag and drop that into my scene. And the minute that I do, I'll zoom in here. The minute I do, you can see that I'm already starting to create some smoke, although I'm sure that that's not in the right position. So as I orbit, I can see that the smoke is kind of way off in the distance. And so what I want to do is I'm going to look down my y-axis. I'll zoom out a little bit. I'll grab this fluffy smoke, make sure that I have the move tool selected, and I'll grab it I'll grab this green box, which allows me to move that particle along two different axes, the Z and the X. And I'll just place that directly in the center of my volcano. I'll look at it from the side view, and I'll make sure that it's not completely underground. So I'll just pick this up, and in fact, what I'll do is I'll leave it above the volcano until I have the effect that I want, and then I'll push it down inside the volcano. So so I have my particles in place. With the particle selected, I'm going to take a look at the inspector panel, and I have lots of different properties that I can experiment with. If I just start to poke around, I can experiment with these. I'll just zoom in a little bit here so we can see a little better what's going on. If I take the maximum size and I start to bump that up, I'll start to see different effects. Minimum and maximum energy is going to be the number of particles that are generated, and I can adjust things like the world velocity. As I bump up values, I should start to see, in this case along the y-axis, I'm starting to get the smoke rising a lot faster, and that was a little bit more aggressive than I wanted it to be. So maybe I'll key in a value of about 5, and I can see that now I have my particles moving upwards. Maybe I want them to drift a little bit in the z space, so maybe I'll choose 0.5, and maybe it's not even the world velocity that I want to start to play with. I have a local velocity and a number of other values, and as I mentioned in a previous presentation, there's a really great feature inside Unity, which is that whenever we're confronted with a large amount of information inside Unity, this is a great example. I'm looking at all these different particle these particle components that I can adjust and influence. And a really great way is just to be intuitive and just kind of experiment one at a time with these values and see what we're starting to get. But if we look at this little help icon, whenever you see a little question mark with this book icon, whenever you click that, it'll take you to the Unity documentation, and specifically it will take you to the exact panel that you're looking at. So that's a really useful way to say, what's this local velocity doing versus the world velocity, and it'll give you a brief explanation of that. So I'm going to experiment with a couple of these values, and I'm really going to focus on the world velocity. I'll try to change the size of the particles as they grow, and really just experiment with a couple of different things here to kind of get a more accurate smoke effect. And once I establish the smoke effect that I want, I'll stick it back inside my volcano, and we'll use that to really kind of direct the user to this point of interest that we just created. So I'll continue to experiment with some of these values offline. I'll come back in and continue to refine my volcano a bit, and then we'll talk about some other environmental effects that we can do to really enhance our scene, including adding some skyboxes, maybe add a little bit of fog and some additional landscapes off in the distance. But we'll catch up and do that in the next presentation.